Welcome everybody. It's 2 o'clock. Thank you for attending this Transport Regeneration and Climate Policy meeting. We'll start with some introductions. I'm Councillor Mazhar Iqbal and I'm the co-chair of this meeting. Just to let members of the public know that this meeting is being webcast as well. Today we've received 5 petitions and 9 questions from members of the public. Agendas are available 7 days in advance online. I think we may have 1 or 2 copies available if any of the members of the public would like a copy of the agenda. Can I also please request that mobile phones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode, please? Members especially. Thank you. And I understand there is no fire test planned today. If there's an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. So if I could ask members to introduce themselves, if we could start with Councillor Ruth, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ruth Mercer. I'm the Councillor for City Ward and a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, I'm Christine Gilligan-Kubo. I'm a Councillor for Hillsborough Ward and I'm Deputy Chair of this committee.
Good afternoon, my name's Diane Hurst. I'm the elected member for Richmond Ward.
Hi, I'm Craig Gamble-Pugh. I'm Councillor for East Ecclesfield Ward and I'm a member of this committee.
Hello, I'm Barbara Masters, Councillor for Ecclesall, and I'm a substitute member for this committee.
I am Andrew Sanger. I'm Councillor for Forward Ward and I'm the group spokesperson on this committee.
I'm Councillor Richard Shaw. I'm the Councillor for Beecham Greenhill Ward and member of this committee.
Thank you. We've also had apologies from Councillor Ian Oakland and Julie Grocott as well today. Sorry.
I'm substituting for Councillor Ian Auckland.
Thank you. Good to have you, Councillor Masters. There's no items for exclusion of public and press. Next item is any declarations of interest. Nope. We have the minutes in front of us. Firstly, are there any corrections, and can we agree them as a matter of record? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Public questions. So the first person I've got on my list is Mr. Trevor Jackson. So if you could go to the mic, sir, and ask a question, please. Sorry, your petition.
Hi, I'm Trevor Jackson on 23 Seagrave Crescent. Can I start? Okay. I've lived on Seagrave Crescent for 38 years. It was a quiet road, that quiet that children used to play football across the road with the occasional vehicle spoiling their game. In 1993, Supertram was installed, meaning that the road traffic was unable to turn right from Ridgeway Road onto Hollins End Road. Due to this, Seagrave Crescent became a shortcut, a rat run, for getting to Hollins End Road and beyond. As an example of the development of traffic on Seagrave Crescent, I monitored the number of vehicles using the road between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. and counted 268 vehicles in that hour. There isn't much we can do about the volume of traffic, but it's the excessive speed by some drivers that make the road dangerous. To make matters worse, there are 3 blind bends on the road, and this is where accidents generally happen. There have been many accidents during the 38 years that I have lived here. My own car has been hit twice while it was parked, causing considerable damage. 3 garden walls have been demolished by drivers coming off the road. I recently organised a petition with the residents of Seagrave Crescent, and I have received 69 signatures in support of traffic calming measures. And here are a few comments made by some of my neighbours. Number 33, thank you for taking action on behalf of the residents. Speed on here is absolutely terrible and makes us want to move house. Number 130, we are happy to support the instalment of traffic calming measures. We have lived at number 130 for just under a year, and within 6 months, Joe's work van parked outside our house was hit by a drunken driver driving over the limit. No one was seriously injured, however. I do feel on many occasions drivers who drive down Seagrave Crescent are well over the speed limit, and feel I always have to be extra cautious when walking up and down the road with my 3-year-old daughter. Number 120, fully supported. I live on the bend. My dog got hit and the car did not stop. Luckily she was injured only and thrives today, but she could well have been my 8-year-old son, although I have taught my son the danger of the road. Number 93. We live at 93 Seagrave Crescent, and I tried a few years ago to have a speed humps put on the road. The then councillor said it would take years to pass through. I would like some form of traffic calming or even a one-way road. And number 90, he's made a comment, it's only a matter of time before there's a fatality. In our area, we are surrounded by streets having 20-mile-per-hour speed limits. Even cul-de-sacs that you would have difficulty reaching 20 miles per hour. Common measures that we would like to see installed would be 20-mile-per-hour speed limit signs, slow down signs painted on a red background on the road surface, preferably at each point where there is a blind bend. Thank you all for your time, and I hope a solution can be found for all the people on Seagrave Crescent. Thank you.
Thank you for the petition, and thank you for the comments from your neighbours as well. I think Councillor Hurst wanted to come in before I respond.
Yes, thank you, Maz. Thank you to Trevor for bringing this petition. Burnley Ward members have been working with the residents and Richmond Ward members for a while to try and find a resolution, but it's only on receipt of this petition that we've actually started to take some action. So it's a real example of democracy in action. Thank you very much. And I thank officers for taking this, receiving this petition and taking action already to start to assess the volume and speed of the traffic and to see what can be done, and we'll work it out from there. Thank you, Maz.
You're welcome. I was up at Burley on Friday with the councillors, and I was visiting the school, and I met the young person, primary age, who'd been hit by a car, and I was grateful to the transport officers, the residents, the police, and we had somebody from the local area committee there. And it's an issue across the city, and I have traffic calming measures, the ward that I represent, Sunnyforth Road, and it doesn't deter the speed. We need to find a different way of tackling some of these issues. The drivers need to be more considerate. Like you say, we have families. I'm turned 50 last year. I remember playing football on any street. There were very, very few cars, and we relied very heavily on a very good public transport system. The buses, 2 pence and 5 pence, and we're there on a regular basis. But we know public transport at this moment in time is completely broken, and people have to travel on different modes. But back to the issue at hand, as Councillor Hurst has highlighted, our transport officers are going to be working with the local area committee and the councillors. They're doing some survey work, which Councillor Hurst has just mentioned, and following that, we'll work with you on the next steps. The challenge that we have, and this, as I said, an issue across the city, is both people resource and financial resource. And yesterday at a different committee, this council faced its 13-year of Tory cuts, and it just becomes really, really difficult when we as an authority want to do something, but our hands are tied because we just don't have the resources. But that doesn't mean we're not going to do anything. As I said, transport officers are carrying out surveys. We'll have another meeting with yourself and the residents, and Councillor Hurst, I'm more than happy to come along to that meeting to look at what we can do. So hopefully it doesn't answer everything that you requested, but hopefully we can work with you to resolve some of the issues that you and the residents face. Thank you for coming in this afternoon. The next petition is regarding the reopening of Little London Road, and that person isn't attending, so we'll provide a written response. The third petition we received is from Jean Buckley regarding the end the closure of Archer Lane. Jean has said she's not going to come in today. She feels intimidated, and therefore she's asked me to read out the question. So if members of the public can bear with me, I think it's important because we've received a petition that, and I've had a request to read it out, so if you could bear with me. So regarding Archer Lane closure, if the aim of closing Archer Lane to motor vehicles, apparently after a survey that did not reach a majority of people living in the area, is to benefit local residents and increase walking and cycling, it has failed to benefit many residents or potential new cyclists or new existing pedestrians. Cyclists who are fit enough and regular cyclists will continue to negotiate the steep surrounding roads. No one will be tempted to take up cycling in this area as opposed to driving or walking. Motorists, including many that live locally, will not take to walking more than they already do. Pedestrians in Nether Edge will not encounter a significant reduction in pollution or danger from traffic because there was no significant problem to begin with. However, the already polluted Abbeydale Road will be increased health hazard to both pedestrians and motorists because of all the additional traffic that has been forced onto it. Sheldon Road and Broadfield Road, especially at the Abbeydale Road end, similarly. Motorists continue to cut through Nether Edge roads from Abbeydale Road to access Brinkcliffe Road in order to get to Ecclesall Road, but are forced to go via indirect routes through Nether Edge in an attempt to avoid the almost permanent traffic jams on Abbeydale Road, Sheldon Road and Woodseats Road junctions, because this adds additional time to their journey. They speed through the 20-mile-per-hour limit. They also speed along Bannerdale, Cartnall and Edgedale roads for the same reason, despite having traffic calming. The closure has caused this, or at the very least made the situation much worse. Edgedale Road has a particular problem in that there is practically no off-road parking, and there are cars parked on both sides at all times of the day, with room for only one car to travel in one direction or the other, not both at the same time. An already very difficult situation, particularly for residents trying to leave or return to their properties, especially at the start and end of the working day, has been exacerbated. While there are real benefits of the closure of Archer Lane, and for whom, compared to the resulting additional traffic and the health hazards for many more people in the area, also the consequences, extra journey time and distance travel for using more fuel and adding pollution. There is a long-standing problem in the area of congestion and pollution. This is not a solution, it is an experiment that has failed. It needs to end now. Signed, Jean Buckley. And she's got a number of residents who've signed that. So we'll be providing a written response to Jean Buckley, and I understand we are due to take a decision on the active travel next month, or is it in May? Just looking to Will for some guidance.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure of the exact date, but I know it's later on this year. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Tom Finnegan-Smith, who may have a more accurate date on that.
Just for clarification, before I bring Tom in, if you could answer this point as well, the experimental traffic regulation order and the project itself is 18 months, I understand. So, and the 18 months isn't over yet, from what I understand. But we can provide a response to Miss Buckley. Tom, did you want to add anything, or Matt? And if you could introduce yourself, that'd be useful.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Tom Finnegan-Smith, Head of Strategic Transport, Sustainability and Infrastructure. The active travel neighbourhoods are introduced under an experimental traffic regulation order. So as you suggested, that means they have a maximum period of 18 months that they can be in place. And during that time, we're obviously reviewing the schemes. The first 6 months was the statutory consultation period for the projects, and effectively we're reviewing the data from the initial period that those schemes have been in at the moment. I was just double checking with Matt, and I think the expiration is September the decision is needed before September this year. At the moment, we've been considering bringing a report to one of the early committees after the elections. It probably will be either June or July, depending on when those meeting dates are set for. So we're hoping to bring a report in the summer on the schemes.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Will and Tom. So when we write to the petitioner, we'll include that. Hopefully a decision will be made at some point in the summer. Thanks ever so much. Next petition is from Michael Shilton. Hi, Michael. Good to go to there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. A bit of context first. This petition is about a site at the end of School Road in Bayton. For the past 10 years, there's been a barrier there that has prevented off-road bikers and cyclists from going down at obviously quite dangerous speeds, with the result being that the pedestrians who the path is primarily there for are safe. A few months ago, without any consultation by the residents or from the LAC, as I understand it, this barrier was replaced by a single bollard, and that single bollard enabled off-road bikers to obviously tear down at very dangerous speeds, as well as cyclists to come down this path. In the space of only 3 hours, the residents managed to compile a petition of 100 names ahead of meeting myself and Clive Betts, the local MP. Hopefully that gives you a kind of the strength of feeling here. As I see it, there are two issues. First of all, going back to what I've just said, there was no consultation by any residents. This happened to them. They had no say in it. And as we understand it, no councillors also were aware of it. Second of all, primarily the point of the petition, obviously, is that this needs to be removed, really. It's very dangerous. It's right next to Brookhouse School and Bayton Infant School, so it's used in the school run. So there's a lot of children and mums using it and dads to get to and from school. And yeah, it's incredibly dangerous. I just want to quickly, if it's okay with the committee, to hand over to some residents directly who can speak about the issues they've encountered. Okay.
Don't usually do that, but we'll allow it because you're here.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say I live right next to the Genel, the footpath. Well, it was a footpath originally, and now they've turned it into a bike lane. I live next door to it, and I've actually been hit by a bike, and she thought she'd got the right of way over me. I didn't even know she was there. She hit me in the bike and told me to watch where I was going. Now, I'd be quite happy to meet any of you there and explain the dangers on site, because it's just not safe as it is. They don't care. They think it's their lane. There isn't even a line to say they should be in that part of it. It's only 8 foot wide. And when they come, they don't care. They don't ring a bell or anything. They just whiz past you, and it's unsafe. I'd like to meet whoever's in charge of this, but we can't get to the bottom of it, who has actually passed it. And I'd meet them on site and some of the other residents and tell them what we'd like, if that's possible.
Definitely is possible, sir. Like I said to the earlier petitioner, happy to come up and happy to come up to Bayton as well. I think another resident wants to speak as well.
Yeah, I would just like to say, and we do get quads going up as well. I live opposite with my neighbour. Also, and we're getting a delivery bike, you know, pizza bikes, takeaway food bikes, and what they're doing is they're delivering on our road, and then they're going on the path to the estate behind, instead of going, round on the road, and it's just time before either a dog walker gets hurt or like kids get hurt. It's just time. As it is now, but it's winter, so it's pretty quiet. Just wait while like summer, and it's just bedlam.
Thank you for the petition and for your comments. I'm sorry that you got hit by a bike. I mean, the reason originally that the barriers were put in to stop the quad bikes, there was loads of residents across the city. I know it's happened in my patch as well, where you got off-road bikers coming on, ruining all the greenery that we have there. And but as I said earlier, we do encourage people to get out of the car, walk, cycle, and that's important. But if we need to do something differently which segregates, because that's what we're doing in some parts of the city, if I can finish, we don't really have a conversation. But what I'll do is, rather than me ramble on, as I said, the commitment is more than happy to come up to Bayton. We'll also invite your local councillors, and as Michael's mentioned, the MP as well, if Clive Betts is involved. So, and I'll get one of our transport officers to come up as well. But as I said, originally it was put there to prevent off-road bikers. But as I said, if you heard the previous petition that I read out, roads are congested. I mean, the problem we have is the bus system is broken, but we are encouraging people to walk and cycle. So, but here we need to find a solution where pedestrians feel safe to walk and the cyclists have got a segregated path, if that's possible. But as I said, let us come up and speak to you and the residents, and we'll take it from there. Hope that's okay. Bro. The next petition is from Ibra Hussain regarding access by taxis. He's not attending and he's not asked me to read anything out either. Now we're moving on to public questions. The first question is from Samantha Nicholson, a good friend of mine. Nice to see you.
Hi. I'll give you a bit of context first. The traffic calming measures were first requested before the park at Westfield was built. Simon, I hope I pronounced his surname right, Botherell, who at the time was a senior transport planning officer, suggested a speed hump here at a cost of around £10,000, which Mosborough councillors at the time agreed to fund through the sale. Simon then came back and suggested a chicane type measurement, which would be more effective and cheaper, but the playground has been in place for over a year now and there's still no traffic calming measures. So my question is, when will works be starting to get a speed car measure in place for Westfield Playground?
Thanks for the question, Sam. I've got a response for you. Firstly, thank you for the question. As I said, and unfortunately, I've probably come across as a broken record, but the seriousness of the issue is that the the funding that we get from government, as I said earlier, has been reduced over the last 13 years. Our budgets have just been decimated. And that means we also lose people, so you lose money and people. But back to the issue here, Simon's no longer with us, but we will pick up the concerns that you've raised. I understand there are conversations happening with the local area committee. Those councillors have also been given the costs for that programme, and it can be, from what I've been told here, that they can fund it through their community infrastructure levy allocation. So we've not had any confirmation back from them. What I will do, Sam, before we respond to you in writing, is get a response from the councillors and the SIL, and we'll put that in writing to you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
The next question is from D. D. Cronshaw. Is he not coming? So it's regarding the clean air zone. I won't read out the question, but we'll provide a written response. We've got the next person is a question from Steve Sharp. No, that's regarding air pollution. We'll provide a written response to Mr. Sharp. The fourth person is Richard Brogden. Have I pronounced his surname correctly, sir?
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Brogden. I'm Principal Dentist of LWC Dental Care, and I'm representing the practice and all of our patient base. We've been at our practice since the early 1950s. I've obviously not been there since the early 1950s. But we cater for over 12,000 of our patients. My specific questions relate to the Connecting Sheffield Red Routes initiative, namely along the Excel Road route, and we are based at the Hunters Bar roundabout. I just wanted to first of all clarify that the committee has received my extensive letter that outlines all of our concerns relating to the proposals of the bus lane restrictions that are due to come in at some point in the near future. Relating to our patient base, though, and representing our patient base, some of my questions are linked, so I'll try and keep it as succinct as I can do. But does the committee give due consideration to discrimination against vulnerable individuals, as highlighted within my letter, when formulating and consulting on transport and infrastructural projects? And in view of the proposed parking alterations within Ecclesall Road, and specifically the Hunters Bar areas, where would the committee suggest vulnerable, infirm, frail and elderly patients would park upon the change implementation of these red routes?
Sorry, I was going to say, do you want to go through all the questions?
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll respond.
And then secondly, given the fact that our practice has not received any direct communication or dialogue relating to this project between the committee and our practice and the council, would the committee consider extending the consultation process to allow us to engage properly and formally within our patient base to discuss the implications of the changes to the highway? And could the committee also please explain why there has not been any proposed changes placed on telegraph poles or signposts in the same manner that planning application is also provided? And just also a consideration as well, as a practice we are duty bound by the Care Quality Commission as well. We have waste contracts and waste contractors that need to attend our practice and dispose of our clinical waste on a regular basis, almost on a daily basis. We have laboratories that attend the practice. They need access to our practice. Categorically, the plans of the Red Route Initiative that are being outlined by the committee are just outrageous, and they give no due consideration to any of our needs and also our patient base, and I cannot really see any way forward. And I hope that the committee will duly interact with us as a practice and hopefully come to some kind of solution amicably.
Thank you for your questions. Please take a seat and I'll respond. I don't know if Councillor Masters wants to say something before I respond, because she's been championing with your other councillors regarding Ecclesall Road. So if Councillor Masters wants to say something.
Well, we have been doing a lot of work with the businesses, but some were actually closed because of COVID restrictions when we were going ground. And I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. I know there's a lot of concern out there, which I have expressed in public on many an occasion, but I'm not so sure that it's the appropriate forum to actually raise that now. But I'm quite happy to talk to you afterwards, sir, because I know where you are. Because you wouldn't let me in when I tried to get in. Okay. No, I actually do understand that, because it's not just you, it's churches and all other businesses on there which have very similar concerns to yours. Happy to talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
Can I call you Richard? Can I call you Richard? Yeah. As Councillor Masters has highlighted, we were in the middle of a pandemic and we went out for consultation. You're right, we can do things better, like you said, putting stuff on lampposts and trying to get to each business and resident as we can. We've had a number of petitions over the last 18 months regarding the bus route proposal for Ecclesall Road. We've had a meeting with the ward councillors as well, who've raised concerns regarding the impact on residents and businesses. The challenge for us is, as I've said, and you'll have heard the other petitions, Ecclesall Road, Abbeydale Road, very congested. Our roads are congested. They weren't built to take so many vehicles. The bus operators are saying we need, if you want to get people not using the car or get them to jump on a bus. Unfortunately, the challenge we have, the bus system, as I've said a number of times this afternoon, is completely broken. We have a regular meeting with the operators, but I think it's towards the end of this month the government could withdraw the grant that it gives to bus companies, which means further bus services can be cut. So for me and the council, the issue's been happy to look at priority lanes, but we need buses to be on those priority lanes, which aren't happening at the moment. So the challenge for us is we need to find a solution on that road. We haven't come to a decision yet. The councillors have asked for a further meeting, which we as a committee are going to meet with the local councillors. And I'm happy to come out with councillors, masters, to come and visit your business and others if need be. But the important issue for us is trying to manage the expectation of businesses, get the city moving. But I'm confident we should be able to find a solution that hopefully works for everybody. So the commitment is we'll come and see you. Nothing's going to be implemented yet. Before we take a decision, a report like this goes out and we have a meeting like this and a decision's taken. At this moment in time, I wouldn't be asking for a decision to be taken because a request has already come in from Councillor Masters and the other two councillors to meet with businesses. So following that, and again, probably a decision more than likely in the summer. So sorry for the long-winded answer there, but we're not taking any decisions. I'm sorry you customers are worried about the measures, but as I said, no decision's been taken. We'll come and speak to you and you'll be made aware whatever decision we decide to take well in advance as well. Hope that gives you a bit of confidence. The next question is from Lewis Elliott. Would you like to go to the mic, sir? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lewis Elliott. I'm 29. I'm an IT infrastructure engineer and I reside in Bradway on 20well Lane. Sheffield prides itself on being one of the greenest cities in Europe, and our council is committed to put climate at the centre of decision making. As a green city, we should be committed to protect our natural spaces by transitioning to a plant-based eating and future-proofing our food systems. You declared on a climate emergency and pledged that the city will be zero carbon by 2030. I'm proud to be a resident of a city that clearly recognises the severity of the crisis that we face and has started to act to rectify this issue. However, this action needs to include every aspect of our council's activities, specifically the provision of food. Other councils, for example, Oxfordshire, Cambridge and Lewisham, have committed to serve only plant-based food at their events. With your responsibility for food provision, you could lead by example and demonstrate how to source food in a sustainable way. This will allow us to protect the future for the next generations in the face of a climate emergency. This can be achieved by offering only plant-based foods at council-managed institutions. Food production can be a key solution as opposed to the huge problem that it currently is, with animal agriculture as the leading cause of climate and ecological breakdown. You acknowledge in your own 10-point plan for climate action that one of the key benefits to climate action is reducing biodiversity loss. Our current food system poses the biggest threat to our biodiversity, so by transitioning away from meat and dairy production would allow us to protect our ecosystems. Climate leadership will be demonstrated in this decision. Other councils will follow suit, meaning that we can see real meaningful change. Sheffield, a city of sanctuary, prides itself on cultural diversity and inclusivity. Plant-based food is the most inclusive option that suits all individuals' dietary requirements, regardless of cultural differences. A study at Oxford University in 2018 demonstrated that a balanced plant-based diet is healthy and nutritious for people of all stages of life, and further studies have shown that plant-based eating is additionally a key solution to public health issues, in that it can reverse non-communicative health conditions such as heart disease and diabetes, in the midst of an extremely worrying NHS crisis. On top of all this, meat and dairy are almost always the most expensive part of a meal. We can reduce food costs and increase the affordability of some of the most vulnerable in our society during this cost of living crisis. I'm aware that in addition to internal catering, the council also holds contracts and leases for many services and venues that include a food offer, for example leisure centres and park cafes, at which you can make huge savings in both carbon emissions and expenses by serving only plant-based meals. Finally, I would like to point out that normalising plant-based eating has the potential to set a precedent in our city, and a really important one, that we should be eating sustainable, healthy food to protect everyone. So I ask you, members of Sheffield City Council, will you make the commitment to a plant-based catering at council-managed events and institutions? Let us show the world that Sheffield is a city that takes sustainability seriously and is committed to creating a better future for everyone.
Thank you for your question, Lewis. We do take our responsibility seriously. I think earlier this week we've set up a cross-party task and finish group to just look at decarbonisation and our journey to net zero. In September 2021, to answer your question, the Council committed to developing a food strategy linking the need to reduce carbon emissions and to boost biodiversity, protect nature, along with developing a wellbeing economy and improving health equality across the city. Pending this review in due course, Sheffield City Council will be releasing a new food strategy which will reaffirm the Council's position that we should use our influence as a large public sector organisation to reduce the impact of local food production and consumption on the environment. As councillors, we are aware of the high impact that meat and dairy consumption has on carbon emissions and biodiversity. However, there are a range of factors we would need to consider before reaching a policy position on plant-based catering. Nevertheless, plant-based policies are certainly something that we will be getting our considerations as we move forward with our new food strategy. The Council recognises that leading by example in this space is important, and developing upstream policy measures that can make a huge difference. Due to this, a public consultation will be carried out shortly and will ensure that you're on our database, so you be involved in that consultation as well to understand the public's view on implementing existing new policies that will help to improve our food environment and safeguard against the negative impacts that unhealthy foods can have on the Sheffield public. The consultation includes the possibility of increasing plant-based food options in our venues. And I've missed one or two paragraphs out, but Lewis, we will provide you with a written response, and as I said, the assurance I can give you is that we'll also ensure that you're involved in the consultation as well. Thanks very much for coming in this afternoon. We've got a question from Richard Tinker, not attending. And then we've on this one, sorry. Oh yeah, Jane. Jane Hilton, is she here? No. Provide a written response. Richard Tinker is not attending, so we'll provide him with a written response. And the last person I've got is Dorothy Dimberline. Is she here? I don't think she's coming now. No, we'll provide her with a written response as well. And there was an emergency question.
James is here, he's in the column.
Yeah. I received an email from James Martin yesterday. If you'd like to come to the mic and ask.
That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This is relating to item 12, the Future High Street Fund item. So, given the difficulties for guide dog users in particular to navigate around segregated cycle routes where there is not a level difference, I just want to draw the committee's attention to the following. Be aware of the compromises in the current design discussion today where there isn't the level differences, and in particular that future schemes must not take Fargate as a golden reference. That some of the challenges and frustrations of the Access Liaison Group with relation to this project relate to the lack of lived experience engagement early on in the journey of changing from the connecting Sheffield and Grey to Green approach to the current scenario. So at the moment, what is done to give the best workaround for the proposal in front of you is a suboptimal one in terms of accessibility. And finally, just to note the paper that I've shared with the political spokespersons for each party here. Note the paper and the rationale of the group's decision and general view. That cycling, as has already been illustrated by one of the partitions, not all cyclists are very courteous and aware. Imagine what it's like if you either have no vision or little or no hearing or difficulty in being able to look around and be aware of your surroundings, as to how silent vehicles can really make it very, very difficult to use a space. Thank you.
James, thank you ever so much for coming in this afternoon. Before the meeting, I spoke to Councillor Sangar and Councillor Christine as well to ask if we could meet with you outside this meeting, because there are some serious questions and issues you raised with us, and there's a number of schemes we'll be implementing across the city, and I think it's important we address this issue, not just for current projects, but anything in the pipeline or we consider in the future. So if you're happy with that, James, we'll be in touch to arrange for us to meet with you as politicians and officers. And happy to meet with you and your colleagues from the Access Liaison Group. And while you're here, I'd just like to say thank you to Access Liaison Group. It's a key stakeholder. You've been part of the, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but part of the establishment as well. So really grateful for the work that you and your colleagues do on behalf of the city. Thanks once again for coming in, and we'll be in touch to come and meet up with you. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll be around taking interest in the discussion, so if I can help. Thank you.
Yes. Moving, that's the end of public questions and petitions. The next item is the work programme, and I'm going to hand over to Sarah on that one. Cheers.
Thank you, Chair. This is the committee's work programme that's brought to every meeting. Its purpose is to plan the committee's programme for the year. So it's a live document, as I've said, and the recommendations are outlined on page 26. You'll also find 2 referrals for discussion made from the North Local Area Committee, one regarding a policy on speed on rural roads and the other on policy on residents' parking schemes. Both referrals have proposed action that these are referred to the Executive Director for City Futures for a response. Lastly, on page 29, there's the proposed additions and amendments to the work programme since the last meeting. That's it, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Any comments or questions? Councillor Pugh.
Yeah, thank you. There was a bit of a discussion on the issue of residents' parking, which is in my ward on Smith Street at the last meeting. The LAC's been trying to refer this for the previous 3 LAC meetings, and at the last meeting I was told that it was going to be tabled for a decision at this committee, at the next meeting of this committee, which was to be today. That's slightly, the proposal in the work plan document is slightly different to that. Can we get some clarity on that?
Yes.
Chair.
Will, can I? I mean, before I bring Will in, I think myself, Andrew and Christine met with the councillors up at Broomhill, I think it was, Broomhill and Sheffield. I don't know if other colleagues were there. But again, there was a request for residents parking on that side of the city. It seems like our focus as a council has been on the city centre. For me, it seems like you've raised an issue, we've had other councillors raise an issue. So what I would suggest is we need to review the policy. Can't just say no. I know it means, and this is the challenge, as I've said earlier, there is a resource implication to this, and it'd be good to understand that our next briefing session, for us members to understand what are the resource and people's implication if we decided to pursue any parking permit anywhere in the city. So I don't know if Will wants to add anything on.
Yeah, that's fine. Just a quick question for Councillor Pooh. Is that a specific scheme that you're mentioning, or is it a wider one?
Thank you. To clarify, there's been an established need amongst residents on Smith Street in Chapeltown that they would like to initiate the formal process of consultation for a scheme to be examined with a view to it being brought in. The feedback that we've had at the last 3 or 4 of our North LAC meetings has been that that can't be done, it can't be considered, because the council's current policy is that no resident parking permit schemes can be considered outside of the city centre. And therefore, the feedback to LAC officers has been that in order for that policy to change, it need to be discussed and agreed by this policy committee. So if we took a view that we wanted a policy that schemes could be considered across the piece, then the normal scrutiny of that scheme in my ward and other ones across the city would have to apply. And whilst I appreciate that what we don't want to do is to have a policy that says, okay, the doors are open, we'll consider every scheme and have a rush in where we raise expectations that then we may be disappointing our residents. I do think that we should be giving serious consideration with proper criteria where there are significant difficulties that are being caused for people in relation to parking.
I'd agree with that, Councillor Pugh, because when I was up at, with the residents up at Broomhill, that was the concerns that there is. I think Tom wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, just to be clear, that we have a parking strategy for Sheffield that does set out how we will take forward parking schemes, and then there's a subsequent report that a cabinet member previously approved, which committed the council to a programme of rolling out controlled parking schemes, and that report confirmed that dealing with almost a worst first kind of perspective, the pressures that were being faced around the city centre, of which a number of areas adjacent to and within the city centre have already got parking controls, but areas like Kelham and Parkhill don't, that the pressures that those areas and those communities are facing should be dealt with as a priority before then further schemes are rolled out. And there is a programme that has been agreed that we've been trying to work through. Clearly there's been some delays to that, and the extensive consultation part of controlled parking schemes is really important. So it's not to say that we can't roll out areas of parking restrictions in other places, but it's the priority order in which we work through that programme. And obviously one of the limiting factors, Chair, is the funding that we have at our disposal to then kind of implement and to develop and then implement those schemes. So more than happy to have another discussion about kind of where the shape of that programme currently is in the context that decision was some time ago. But I think that the kind of the needs around the city centre, we've got our Parkhill scheme that it has gone through the consultation process. The Kelham Island scheme is due for consideration at next month's committee. There's the St Vincent's part of the city centre, of which some of those streets are within the inner ring road with no parking controls. I think would probably still settle at the kind of officer recommended priorities, but more than happy to have that discussion.
Councillor Pugh, you don't really answer the question that you put to us at the beginning. I mean, as you say, Parkhill is coming to an end, so the consultation's concluded. Same with Kelham. For me, the request has come in and it keeps being bounced, and I think it's unfair on the local members there. If the policy needs reviewing and finding a way of trying to include one or two of the permit parking schemes, then I'm happy to look at that. And I see Councillor Sengar nodding his head as well. So, Tom, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't necessarily think it's the policy. I think it's the kind of programme and funding that is allocated to delivering that policy. So I think more than happy to have that discussion. You know, we are going to be bringing our kind of programme for the year ahead, and we've had a briefing with members about the shape of that recently. So happy to consider that in the round in terms of what we are proposing to develop next year and years after. But I don't think it's a policy position. I think it's around capacity and funding for those schemes. If you see those as a priority above other aspects that our programme are delivering, and where there is that flexibility to provide additional funding, we can certainly work with committee on that.
It'd be good to understand, I mean, it'd be good to get those figures of how much it costs. I know it won't be, each scheme is quite different in itself, but as one of the responses I gave to Sam was that, for example, in Mosborough, the local councillors are looking at using their community infrastructure levy. I know each ward has a variation because we use the index of multiple deprivation, so everybody doesn't get the same amount. I have no idea what the members in your ward receive, Craig. So if we could pick that up as a discussion at our next briefing, would that be helpful, Craig?
I think, yes, it probably, I mean, certainly would, but also I think the information that's been reported to our North LAC has been very clearly couched in terms that it is a policy matter, and for that scheme to be considered, it would need to be referred to this policy committee. So I think it's quite important then that we get really clear information, because obviously we need to be able to advocate for our ward residents, and we also need to be able to advocate for policy to be amended as appropriate to meet the needs of residents across the city. But clarity, you know, we know that we can't do everything that people want us to do across the city, and it's part of the tough job of being an elected member that we're the ones quite often that are kind of looking people square in the eye and saying, sorry, you know, you are down the list of priorities. But if we can give people clear information, and I think at the minute it doesn't feel like myself and my ward colleagues and others on the North LAC have had quite the clarity that we've heard today. So I'll undertake to speak to officers outside the meeting, Chair, and we'll hopefully get that clarity.
I mean, Regarding clarity between officer and officer, I think officers within the LAC team can definitely, if we could get in touch with, I think Dawn shows the director, if we provide her with a policy document, hopefully she can cascade it to her team, so there's no ambiguity there. But as I say, Craig, we're going to bring it for a discussion. Councillor Sangar, and then...
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I've got a lot of sympathy with Councillor Gamble Pugh's position. I mean, Smith Street is in Chapel Town is one of those places where there's clearly a parking challenge. Exactly what the solution is, I don't know. I'm not local to the area, so I don't know what the right answer would be. I think there is a difference between the two reports here, between parking on Smith Street and speeding on Rails Road. I don't think they're the same policy. And I think the process matter is understanding the process because Chair, I think your last answer, there is still available, could be an answer to speeding traffic. I'm not convinced it's the answer to residence parking because I think residence parking is a policy matter which currently sits here. I personally think speeding, with the road speed limit could be an issue where the LAC could use its SIL money. I don't think they have that opportunity, that option at the moment in terms of Smith Street residence parking. So I'm very keen that we're clear where the policy is, and also clear, given that the North LAC has tried to refer both of these matters to this committee for decision, and here we are effectively saying we don't know when we're going to take either decision. I mean, I would have thought we could, for the next meeting, at least get a report on when are we going to take a decision and who is going to take that decision. And if the decision is it's a LAC matter, go and make it yourself. If the decision is no, it's a policy matter, we need to review residence parking, then and that's a 6-month process, then fair enough. But at the moment, we've got the North LAC sending us 2 reports for decision, and they've not managed to arrive on our agenda. I feel from a process point of view, that's not a good position to be at. So I would like some clarity on that. I do have a question on another matter on this report to come back to.
Christine?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. My response isn't actually going to help this issue, but I'm just saying that I'm on the governance committee, and we are reviewing how the committee system and the LAC system interact as one of our pillars. And I think it's very clear that we do need to really think about how the LACs and the policy committees interact, and we want to make sure that there isn't this ping-pong effect, so that somebody refers it to the LAC and then it goes somewhere else and then it goes back again. And I think as part of the governance review, we will look to get a clear process in there to stop this happening in the future. As I say, it's not very helpful now, but it is something we will try and sort out.
Thank you for your contribution, and you're right about my flippant comment on the SIL, so sorry there, but thanks for clearing that up. Will, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think what this conversation is doing is shining a light on the need for more clarity, as Councillor Gilligan has just pointed out. I think there are probably 2 things. I think the slightly longer term thing is as Councillor Gilligan says, is through the governance review, we look at the processes between LACs and committees and get real clarity on where responsibilities lie. But I think the debate today is broadly focused around transport initiatives. So we've talked about speed, we've talked about parking, we've talked about other measures related to transport. So I think we've talked about SIL as well, Community Infrastructure Levy, and how that funding might be used. So I think one of the things that I will certainly take away is an action to speak with Dawn, as you suggested, Chair, who's our Director for Communities, and get some kind of early guidance into officers that are supporting LACs on the things that we can do and things that we can't do, just so that we can hopefully provide some really quick answers on some of the transport-related issues. I agree, though, Chair, that probably we need a more thorough, comprehensive piece of work as part of the governance review on how LACs interact with committees. But certainly, you know, a kind of a factual piece, a quick piece where officers supporting LACs can go to communities and say, this is possible, or there may be a route here, or this isn't possible, unfortunately. I think that would be really useful. So I'll take that away to speak to communities colleagues, Chair.
Any final comments, Greg? You're fine with what's been suggested?
I've heard what's been said.
But it is unfair on members, as you said, to keep ping-ponging. So for me, we need a resolution. So when we come back at the next TRC committee, we want to be able to say something positive on how we're addressing the issue. So that's a challenge back. Bro, anything else on the work programme, Councillor Sangar?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And can I thank officers for the useful session we had in terms of getting items to this committee agenda and the next one. I still remain concerned, you know, starting on page 42, that we have, you know, 6 pages of items that we are not going to be able to discuss this year. My understanding it has been us, Strategy and Resources and Finance Sub, who have had this problem this council year. I just make another plea to the Governance Committee and to officers involved that we find a way of managing the work programme. I know officers are working incredibly hard, and I know clearly this committee has got a very big agenda. Yeah, you've heard me say what part of the answer is in terms of some of the local transport schemes and lacks, but that's not the whole answer. And you know, fully accept that I'd be one of the ones wanting the climate change reports here and wanting the Regeneration Committee reports here. I get all that, but we need to do something about being clear at the outset of the year what we're trying to set out in terms of the big strategic reports. Some of these clearly are, you know, maybe might not be that, but it's very frustrating for members to find that nearly at the end of the year we haven't been able to cover some of the topics we expected to, and I don't think we fully picked this up at the interim committees last year. And I think it's been a real problem for Transport, Regeneration and Climate. As I say, I think the other 2 committees that have suffered have been the 2 strategic ones, Strategy and Resources and Finance. And in a sense, we're not surprised that that's a problem. If you go from a cabinet system, it's not surprising that SNR and Finance are where the problem is. But TRC has become an added part of that, and I just urge colleagues on Governance Committee to do something about this for next year to make sure that the work plan for TRC is manageable, both for members but also for senior officers as well. Thank you, Chair.
I support everything you've just said there, Councillor Anger. It's been a challenge, as you say, for members and officers, and it's we've all tried to get as much business and briefings as much as we can. I remember Michael's not here when we're working on the local plan. I remember him dropping an email and saying, can we meet at 5 o'clock on a regular basis? I said, sod off, because we just, and I feel for the officers, it's just, you know, there's 84 members. We've had a number of public petitions that officers respond to, questions that they have to respond to, and then get on with delivering projects and so forth. So it has been a huge challenge. I mean, one of the criticisms from me is, as a cabinet member, I did suggest that, you know, this was too big. I did say that resourcing these committees, if they're not resourced properly, then we're going to have challenges. But we are where we are, and the Governance Committee will hopefully take on board the comments. We are writing, I think, or we will, to the Governance Committee. I mean, the solution for me would be to in a sense, take transport out and have that as a committee on its own, and Regeneration and Climate as one committee. It is completely unfair on all of us, that's members and officers, to be working with what we've got, because I think it was Matt who dropped an email on a Saturday and Julie had to tell him off. But the nature of these things are that the government tells us that we've got some funding, and you need to get a proposal in by yesterday, and it's just unfair that, you know, the burden on officers and politicians. So not looking for an answer from anybody, but if Will wants to, or Sean wants to comment, I mean, they're doing an amazing job. If you look at what's on the work programme, what we've delivered and been briefed on this year, it's just amazing what we're doing for the city. But the Governance Committee hopefully does need to take on the concerns that we've raised. Well,
I agree that it's a very challenging agenda in this committee. I think there are probably two things. The first thing is, you know, we are now committed to holding regular work planning sessions with members. We had another one last week. I think that will help us to refine how we brief, so at least we can cut down on the time necessary to bring people up to speed with the things that we're bringing through committee. I hope we'll find efficiencies there, and we've made some suggestions there which we're going to bring back to members very shortly. We all did have an opportunity to provide responses into the governance committee as officers and as members. We've done that as officers. You know, we were speaking again with colleagues last week who were running that process. I think, you know, we're saying some of the same things that you're saying. Ultimately, what governance committee, the governance review will decide, you know, it will be up to us to kind of work with that and try and implement that. But I think there are efficiencies and hopefully solutions that we can find within TRC, given what we've got, through consolidating some of the briefing sessions, making sure that we are keeping an accurate note of where we've briefed, where members want more briefings, where actually people are up to speed, and we can move quickly to decision making. I do hope that, you know, as we come to terms with the committee system, and we shouldn't forget that it's quite a young system, and big changes like this will have teething problems and will take a time to settle down. But certainly since I've been in the council, I think things have improved in terms of the committee, and we'll continue to push on that, Chair. Thank you.
The challenge is, I mean, I can use, I hope Christine doesn't mind me using her as an example. It's like Tuesdays, she's working. Craig's works different rotas, and there'll be other commitments from members as well. So, you know, it is, we all, regardless of what political party, everybody takes their responsibility seriously. For me, it's important, and I'm grateful to the office for addressing this. You know, I don't want to be on a major policy briefing without Councillor Sangar or Councillor Kubo present, and you know, that's the way the new system works, and it's a challenge. But for me, I agree that the business of this committee is just too big. Transport, because there's regeneration, which we touch upon, a couple of items on the agenda, and climate. So, Craig, did you want to come in for the final comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, I think other people have alluded to it. I think that part of what the platform that I was elected to serve on the council was a really ambitious platform of tackling the climate emergency, and I was very glad to have been appointed to this committee, and I'm really disappointed that we haven't been able to dedicate the amount of time looking at how we push ahead and give political leverage and leadership to that issue. During this municipal year, I've been really pleased to be representing council on the UK 100 Climate Leadership Academy, bringing our council together with 20 other councils across the country, and speaking to people at that Climate Leadership Academy who have all got political responsibility for climate change. None of the other authorities that are involved in that academy have as many different things incorporated within the same policy portfolio as climate as we do. And so I think I would urge colleagues to give serious consideration to repositioning and changing how and where climate is dealt with within our decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jane Wilby, Head of Accounting for Finance and Commercial Services. So this is a standing item on every committee's agenda. The purpose of the report is to bring the committee up to date with the Council's General Fund outturn position. The last update you had was in November, which was the month 6 numbers. This is the November month 8 numbers. The Council overall, it is steadily improving against the forecast outturn position, but it's still a significant overspend for the authority. At month 8, we were reporting 17.1 million overspend. Month 7 was 18.7, so it improved 1.6 in the month. The main improvements were due to strong cash balances for the authority and favourable interest rates, so we were able to claw a bit back from interest on our investments. The main areas for overspend in general for the council are in social care. So we've got 11.6 million over in adults and 6.6 million in children's. The reasons for the overspend is due to the shortfall in delivering the savings plans in each of those committees. The committee position is $500,000 underspent against a net budget of 42 million. The position improved from month 7 to month 8 by about 200,000. We saw some of the actual costs coming through from the back pay relating to the pay award that was slightly lower than the estimated position that we accounted for at month 4. The main reason for the underspend in the committee is for a couple of things. There's some vacancies held in planning and transport, and there's also some favourable income in the highways network management activity, which is often difficult to predict due to when we're setting the budget. Happy to take any questions on that, but it's just a general overview, quick update of the financial position. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jane. Any questions? Just on the budget, a question from me. I've had a query from Councillor Downing regarding, I think it's the Westfield 20 mph zone. I think costs generally, like everything else, have gone through the roof, pardon the pun. And it's having an impact on a number of schemes. I'm not looking for an answer here today, but if we can at our next policy briefing, if we could understand how many of those schemes are going to be possibly delayed because of costs increasing, can we not use some of this underspend to meet those costs so we can deliver those schemes across the city? Would my colleagues, members be happy if we had that briefing at our next session? Yeah. That could be picked up. Tom? Yeah. Brilliant. Jane? No questions. Thanks ever so much for your report. Next item on the agenda is the Parkhill parking scheme. I've had a request from the local members to defer this to a future meeting. So if we can defer that item, colleagues happy with that? Yeah. Bro. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. What the reasons are for deferment, just for information?
Yeah, I've had a request from the local members to defer the report. So I've agreed to defer that, if that's okay with members. Yeah. Bro.
Thanks, Chair. Got a bit of a technology failure, but I think it sorted itself out. Okay, so thank you, Chair. For members of the committee, I'm assuming that you've read the report and you're aware of the recommendations, so I won't go into them in too much detail. But essentially the paper outlines the programme for the next stage of transformative transport investment, namely through the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, which has been awarded to the Mayo Combined Authority from the Department for Transport. It's been agreed through a previous bidding process outlined by the Mayo Combined Authority. And one of the key issues we're going to find with delivering transport programmes over the next 5 years is the fluctuation in cost pressures that we find across all of our capital programmes at the moment. So there's specific requests in there to look for flexibility within that programme rather than defining specific amounts of allocated funds to each specific project. We know there'll be a requirement to shift between individual schemes. We want to emphasise from a team, we want to emphasise the importance of consultation, and we specifically reference that within one of the recommendations. So as alluded to in some of the conversations we've had already, We are really emphasising the way in which we have done consultation in the past. Our engagement with stakeholders is critically important to champion some of the main changes that we're looking to achieve through these programmes of work. And that's something which we'll be working with this committee, with members, with the LACs, to understand how we can best manage those conversations. The schemes have been derived from a number of sources. First of all, the transport strategy, which responds to strategic transport modelling in relation to our local plan allocations. So the programme has been set to develop around future growth of the city. It also builds on existing programmes of work that we've got going on at the moment and currently in programme. And I think you'll kind of be aware when you look at some of the sort of where those schemes are, excuse me, as to where they are spatially. And then finally, one of the areas of the city that we've not really tackled in terms of our existing connectivity is to the Northern General Hospital and to the northern communities, which we know is a key attractor for various different reasons, whether it's work, whether it's visiting, or for any other means in that kind of northern community area. So that's an area where we're looking to focus on. So on that basis, Chair, I'll hand over for questions.
Thanks ever so much. Councillor Kubo.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. I welcome the emphasis on sustainability in the bid, and the way it talks about the need for bus priority schemes, high quality cycling and walking, accident reduction and reducing congestion. So I have no problems with that at all. I welcome it. The one thing I just wanted to get some clarity on is on page 154, it's 4.26. It just says the investment in the highways infrastructure will generate revenue maintenance liability. How are we going to meet the increased revenue maintenance liability?
Okay, so thanks, Councillor. That refers to our commuted sum when we change the highway network. So at the moment we're looking, because the schemes are at such a formative stage, we're not quite sure what that looks like. That will be tested through the strategy and resource approval through the capital gateway process. So when we put a new piece of infrastructure in, some members will know that we have to pay an element of maintenance for the duration of the contract. And that is something which we pick up through the approval process. So we wanted to put it in this report because it's clearly a financial implication. That will be sorted on when the schemes come forward. But equally, what we've found with some of our projects is that we're able to demonstrate a negative commuted sum as well. So where we're putting something in which is actually enhancing an asset which wouldn't normally have been, or would reduce that maintenance liability, then actually that demonstrates a benefit. So that is done on a really granular level, but it's a good point to pick out, but it's something that we are aware of.
Just a quick question from me, page 150 on the trams work. We've not had the full allocation. If you could just spend a minute, Matt, just telling us where we're at.
Yeah, so sorry, Chair, I should have picked that one up. As part of our CRSTS allocation through the Combined Authority, we've contributed an element of our share, the city's share, towards the enhancement of Supertram. So as members might be aware, members of the public might be aware, there is an ongoing maintenance liability of Supertram, of which we're currently developing in consultation. We're working with the Mel Combined Authority to ask the Department for Transport for a large sum of money to maintain the asset of Supertram. This is our way to demonstrate our commitment towards that project. The money won't come to, because the money is already sat with the MCA, it won't come to us to then go back. That would be really inefficient financial reporting. So it's just going to stay with the MCA, but we just want to register that money is from our allocation to support the Supertram network.
Is the figure close to about 300 million? I don't know if somebody's got... good to understand that the reason I'm pushing is members, because we're streaming, the members of the public, it's a huge programme, huge challenge, and the council itself doesn't have the cash to do the full programme, so it'd be worth if you could just spend a minute, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, so thanks, Chair. So, yep, the cost of the major maintenance, which is kind of whole-scale maintenance of the tram network, is significantly more than the £100 million that's been secured. The work, as Matt's indicated, to kind of develop that business case for further investment across all of those assets is being undertaken at the moment, and obviously that's looking at different options in terms of how that kind of sustainability of the Supertram into the future is going to be maintained. including things like whether certain aspects of the Supertram assets can be extended in terms of their lifespan, and therefore some of the costs associated with those managed in a slightly different way. So that work's being undertaken at the moment, and a business case is going to be going to government to seek that additional funding for the future of Supertram.
Thank you for that, Matt and Tom, because the aspiration isn't just to maintain, but to extend as well. I remember attending a mayoral combined authority event where set out the aspiration for the city is to extend. But thank you for your response there. Councillor Senghor?
Yes, Chair, and you know, there's clearly a huge amount of good work going on, and huge aspiration. I mean, I just wanted to go back to Supertram, because clearly we've come to an important stage. We're 30 years in. The tram train extension to Rotherham has been a success. But overall, Supertram is a success, and as the officers have just said, we're now in the position of needing to renew the infrastructure, but we will also need to at some point, renew the trams themselves. And as you yourself have just said, Chair, that the question about extending the network needs to be back on the table. I mean, I know 10, 15 years ago we talked in detail, and we struggled at all times to keep all of our colleagues in neighbouring authorities on board with our aspirations from a Sheffield point of view. I mean, it's really good that we've got Rotherham into the network. You know, there's other ways in terms of, you know, extending that network further in a northeasterly direction, I would have said, which is clearly not a matter for this committee. But overall, Supertram is something which people say is a success for Sheffield, and it's, you know, it is a transport mode where we can get modal shift, we can get people out of cars and onto the tram. So I'm really keen that we both support this infrastructure renewal, but also in terms of the vehicle renewal, which will need to come. And then we need to keep the whole issue of extending the network, because, you know, there's 2 or 3 extensions within Sheffield that have been on the table for 20 years. And I just feel we need to make sure in the next 5 years that we take the opportunity of working both with the mayoral combined authority, but also with government in terms of delivering an enhancement to our tram network. Thanks, Chair.
Just following on from that point, if I could ask Will, because I attended a session last year, I think it was, on the vision and what we'd like to see. It'd be good if we could bring something. It'd be good to have a briefing at one of our sessions. But if we could bring something to this committee, just to highlight where we are. But also, I think it's important that we set our ambition and vision. That, as I've been saying all afternoon, you know, if we're going to try and get people to mode shift, and as Councillor Senghor's pointed out, when I'm on the tram, you've got people of all ages carrying the shopping and everything else. The only downside is you can't take your bike on there, which is disappointing, but hopefully I'm hoping we can address that issue somehow. But it'd be great if we could bring something back to a public meeting to share what I've just said. Sorry, just before I bring you in, Will, was it on this matter or something else, Councillor? Yeah. Not on the tram. No. So, Will, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Just quickly on tram, I totally agree with councillors around the room on the importance of stating, the importance of Supertram for this city. And I think just on the vision piece, there is work underway with MCA at the moment on a tram vision. I think it's a really important piece of work. We're playing a very significant role in that visioning work, and the aim there is to create a very, very coherent piece around what we see the future of the tram being, and that includes extension, that includes sustaining it. I mean, you know, if you only have to look around the country and see other local authorities who haven't got a tram really pushing for a tram, and we've got one in the city, so we need to support the tram, and we need to be really ambitious about its future. So I think it's a great idea that we bring something back for this committee, either through a briefing or we can do something publicly which states our ambition for the tram. There is work underway looking at that vision, but I think, you know, the critical piece for me as well is really stating the importance of the tram to the city, but bringing our partners around the city in on that conversation as well, because ultimately it will be Sheffield's communities, institutions, private sector partners, voluntary and community sector. If everybody has a vision for the tram that they can buy into, then that will give us a very, very strong narrative to go to government, to go to DFT and make those requests for funding, which we know, as has been pointed out by Matt and Tom, are incredibly substantial. So we need to do that, but I think, you know, a really strong, coherent, ambitious vision for tram is something that we can certainly work on.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Will. Councillor Musser?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Page 143, wondering why a climate impact assessment hasn't been done for this, because it's such a big transport scheme. Also noticing that there's mention of road widening, I believe, on the Chesterfield Road corridor. I'm wondering if you could tell us more about this and look at how this will enable modal shift.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. In terms of the CIA, this is a high-level programme level recommendation. So carbon impact assessments will be done, climate impact assessments will be done when the schemes come forward in their individuality. So because this is a climate level approval, we've not done a specific climate impact assessment, but there is climate implications written further down in the report, so we are picking it up. It'll be difficult to do a climate impact assessment on something as broad brush as this, hence the reason why we bring them forward in each individual project. The second one about road widening on the Chesterfield Road corridor, I'm not entirely sure. You know, this project again is nowhere near even started the design. It's just gone through its initial indications of what we think we might want to do on that project. Members will be aware, some in this corridor, some of this room will know that we've actually walked down the corridor itself and took on all the member feedback. That road winding might be in relation to the provision of a crossing or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what it's related to, but we can pick that one up later. But equally, this is just a high-level summary of something which is yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wanted to welcome the programme on for Chesterfield Road. It's very important for not just people travelling into Sheffield from Chesterfield and Dronfield and beyond, but also people living in South Sheffield. And you know, number one complaint I receive is about bus services and reliability. And you know, I think this programme will be welcomed by many people. And secondly, on ambitions for the tram network, going back to that, one of the ambitions that we could take forward is possibly extending the tram from Herdings towards Meadowhead and beyond, because there's very poor kind of east-west public transport connectivity in South Sheffield. You know, try getting to Gleedless from Jordanthorpe or other areas is very difficult by public transport, and it would also support the development of brownfield sites and housing in the area. So it's something that we should be very ambitious and put that forward to the MCA.
Thank you for those positive comments, Councillor Shaw. And I'm glad you welcomed the scheme and your residents be happy on. Hopefully, the decision today is just straightforward. But for me, you know, £135 million of investment coming into the city is great news and something we should definitely welcome. And it just again re-emphasises the hard work our officers do to bring this cash in, and it's not just something that you can do that's straightforward, but a lot of technical work that goes into this. And as I say, as members, we're all grateful to our officers, and also take an opportunity to thank our Mayor, Oliver Coppard, as well for supporting the city with this ambition. And the final point I'd like to make is, I think it was Matt who mentioned, you know, this is a great opportunity for the north of the city, especially for the hospital, and the connectivity it will provide. And as it says in the report, it's also providing opportunity, employment opportunities as well. So that connectivity, not just for people to get around, but able to access the other sustainable transport routes is great. So again, thank you ever so much to the team for getting us here. A lot more work that needs to be done. So we're noting the report, aren't we? Yeah. So colleagues, if we could, yeah, brilliant. Next item 11 is East Bank Road Active Travel Project. So is that you again, Matt? Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Like last time, I'll assume that the reports have been read. The one thing I would say is that any recommendations from this committee will be caveated by the Department for Transport's approval of our timeline submission. So it's currently going through a change control process. That is down to the very tight timescales that we're working to deliver a lot of these schemes, as a lot of members understand. We have to deliver this scheme by March 2024, which is clearly not going to happen given where we are with the project. So that's what we're going through the change control process for. As a result, we are quite early on in the project. We are still yet to determine exactly what intervention is going to be put in the ground. But in order for us to take this through our internal approval process, we need the policy committee to support our transition for further design and development. And support through the internal approval process. And that's essentially what the report outlines. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions? Councillor Shaw?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt, for the report. You kind of answered one of my questions, which was about the timeline for 2024. As we all know, ATF1 and other schemes have been having issues with supplies and inflation and so on. So the change control request for December 2024, what has that date been based on?
So we've worked back from a logical point where we think we might be in a position to do the works as what we currently think there might be, but obviously that's subject to further consultation, further engagement and further design challenges. We will also be engaging with suppliers to try and understand where the procurement for those specific materials come from, which we know has been the hold up for some of our other projects. So that is the deadline at the moment, where we're working with contractors to kind of establish where we think we might need to be. Obviously, we're making loads of assumptions around what we think might need to happen. That will then change, but at this point in time, that's the best guess, Councillor Shaw, where we think we are with the delivery date.
And my second question, Chair, was I believe inflation for construction materials is currently around 27%, which is, well, it's staggering. So assuming costs tend to increase, would it be looking at scaling back the scope or leveraging in additional funding to meet the original scope of the project?
It's probably a bit of both. Whenever there's any scope creep or any kind of change in cost fluctuations, what we call a value engineering exercise takes place. Now, what we've always said is that this scheme has been scalable, and there are kind of defined points as to where you could break the scheme. So we originally put the bid in to go from. So the reason why it's so important is because strategically it connects to the train station, connects to the college, but also connects into the Sheaf Valley route at Shoreham Street. So it starts to develop that network towards the southeast of the city, which we know is an important route to connect into. There are breakpoints from there, as I said. So there's kind of doing that first bit by kind of Farm Road, Duchess Street up to East Bank Road. And then it probably goes to kind of East Road. But ultimately we want to get it up to Daresbury Avenue, where we can then tie into all the work at Gleadless Valley Master Plan and everything else. We start to get into some of them communities. So naturally the business case process will test this, see whether we're still getting value for money, and that's all part of that optioneering. But in terms of inflationary cost pressures, we are factoring that into our current design, so they are known, and we always tend to put quite a lot more risk and contingency into our project budgets anyway. 27% is actually quite generous. I think steel's more like 50%. It's a lot higher at the moment. But also just the availability of professional services as well is also quite a problem to risk of delivery. But these are things that we're trying to factor into towards that DFC change control that we've mentioned.
Thank you. I mean, needless to say, I think this is very ambitious, and it's kind of project that we need to see in this city.
Councillor Kubo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support what Councillor Shaw has just said. I think it's a good project. It's very ambitious, and mine isn't particularly a question. I mean, I know that it's trying to achieve a lot of the city goals, and particularly it talks about in the sustainable growth, and the modal shift, which is really important in here. It talks about allowing businesses to grow their businesses, giving them better access, and much more access to services and amenities. And I think this is what we've been doing in all of our projects at this committee, and we endlessly have debates about when we go out to consultation, the message is not clear and getting out there. And I know that there is going to be more consultation as the plan develops. So I really just want to say we really need to get our consultation right so that everybody understands the wider benefits and how the scheme fits in. And I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's an excellent scheme and it has got great potential, but we do need to somehow try and get it through without the endless wrangling that we seem to have. That's all
it's been a challenge, both for members, officers and residents. I mean, the biggest challenge for us all was COVID, and as we all know as members, as I said earlier, the government sets unrealistic deadlines. And as I said, Matt was emailing us, and Will's done it at midnight, and Tom does it as well, because the government don't recognise that this is the world we live in. So, for me, there's been a lot of learning with the two schemes, and we need to continue. I think it was Will at one of our briefings that said, the city's going to be having, we'll be consulting on an active travel strategy for the whole city. That's the ambition. It's great to see that we're moving ahead with another scheme. Like you say, there was a lot of learning. For me, the key bit of learning was once we know what the interventions are, we need to go out and consult with the residents. But it's just great news. It's, again, delivering on the city's ambition, and an investment of close to £2 million for that neighbourhood. So, again, great news. So I don't know if Matt wants to come back on anything.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say there's probably three things here. One is that we've been working very hard with our internal comms team, and we've managed to secure some resource, which is great, which means we can start having a look at what messages we need to say and how we sell it and the engagement techniques and everything else. The second piece is that we've appointed some consultants to tell us what the best practice is with all this kind of thing. What kind of messages to lead with, how to do it, how to engage, how not to engage as well, which obviously we can put a lot of our learnings from how we think we've not quite achieved what we need to do to go into that. But then the third piece, and the Chair picked up on it, it's really important that we set all this within the context of what we're trying to do. So people can see where we're getting to. So, where we're doing this one particular stretch of work, it actually ties into the next piece and the next piece. That is the fundamental missing piece of the jigsaw, I think, is the most significant one. So we're about to embark on a quite a big piece of work around how we manage that for the city. We will be looking kind of more strategically, so actually how it connects into some of our neighbouring authorities, not just within South Yorkshire, but particularly in the south, the city going into a place like Dronfield as well, where we can start to pick up on some of those strategic movements. But most importantly, that sets the tone, that sets that. So when you're talking to your constituents and everyone in Sheffield can look back to this plan and go, oh, that's what they're doing, it starts to all tie together. So that's a really important piece of work, and we are doing that, and we'll bring that back to committee when I think we're ready for it. So that's a really exciting piece of work.
Thank you, Matt. So can we agree for this project to proceed? Brill. Thanks ever so much. And I think the final item is the Tammy and Matt show, Future High Street update. And I understand we're just getting the screen ready for you as well. start whenever you're ready. If you could
Okay.
introduce yourselves as well, that'd be great. Thank you.
Tammy Whittaker, Head of Regeneration and Property Services.
And Matt Heyman, Principal Development Officer with City Regeneration and Major Projects.
So the purpose of the report today is to provide an update on the Future High Streets Fund and, you know, given the conversation we've just had, also highlight some of the construction increases, cost increases and how we're going to mitigate that. So I'll hand over to Matt, who's going to talk you through some of the designs and the slides that we put together for today's meeting.
Okay, we thought it would be useful to give some of the background and obviously not lose sight of the original vision, which was approved by central government with the award of 15.8 million Future High Streets Fund money. This was match funded through a commitment from the council's corporate investment fund, so a total public sector investment of £20.8 million. And it was a stated, and still is a stated, spend deadline for the Future High Street Fund, 15.8 million of 31st of March 2024. So this obviously informs the urgency in trying to get on site, particularly with the public realm and infrastructure works. That £20.8 million worth of investment was for three main interventions on Fargate, High Street, Castle Square, the first being the public realm and infrastructure. Investment in high quality materials in keeping with the investment the city's made in their city centre public realm over the last 20 years or so. So that benchmark had been set and we were looking to meet that benchmark. But also investment in climate resilience through greening and servicing infrastructure on Fargate particularly. The second intervention was for the acquisition and refurbishment of a building on Fargate, and we did this back in, I think, October 21. We purchased 20 to 26 Fargate with a view to creating something we've termed Event Central, so a cultural hub on the high street and obviously a demonstrate in terms of I've lost the slides. Okay. Yeah, so it demonstrated to landowners that other uses other than primary retail were feasible on the high street. The third intervention was the front door scheme, so around £5.1 million worth of investment to work with landowners to repurpose vacant space on the high street, particularly the upper floors, many of which were left dormant and underused. In terms of the business case we submitted to government and was obviously approved, we envisaged or we estimated around £26 million worth of private sector investment would come with the investment on Fargate and High Street. And what we demonstrate was a benefit cost ratio for that investment of 4 to 2, and government have stated that at the very least it needs to be 2 to 1. So this obviously informs the change request we're going to have to go through if this report is approved by committee today. And some of the outputs, some of the outcomes: 160,000 additional visitors, 550 jobs, and then there were also monetised wellbeing benefits, reduced crime, antisocial behaviour, and then there was a wider land value uplift which we demonstrated. So, next slide, please. So, in terms of the public realm and infrastructure works, the biggie is that at concept design stage and REBA stage 2, that informed an approved budget of 8.8 million. We appointed the contractor, civils contractor SIS, back in, I think, March of last year on a design and build contract, and they've worked through the detailed design. And the latest cost estimate is 18 million, so a big jump from that 8.8 million. This is primarily down to inflation. However, there are items such as the hostile vehicle measures in terms of the bollards and the deep foundations that they require. The cost of that is around £1 million, which wasn't factored in at the outset. And then there's also quite a hefty client inflation contingency, knowing the issues we've had over the last 18 to 24 months of about 1.7 million. Again, the government's funding deadline is 31st of March, so we've been trying to find a route through this to secure some additional funding, and what we're also proposing the phase in the public realm. So first phase would be for Fargate. It's fair to say the majority of the outputs and outcomes in the approved business case do focus around Fargate, with obviously Event Central and the infrastructure for further and greater events on Fargate itself. And hopefully that will enable start on site in March to April this year. Next slide. Proposed phase 1, Fargate. So just to do this in isolation, a cost of 14.5 million. So we would have to find in the region of 5.7 million additional funding to press the button and ask the contractor to crack on. We've been in discussion with South Yorkshire MCA and we've got an in-principle agreement for them to fund 4.6 million of that gap. And also what we're proposing in this report is the reallocation of what's left in the front door scheme funding to the public realm and infrastructure budget. One of the key issues is we are anticipating should the approval of submitting that full business case to the MCA be approved, that there is a gap between their approval, which is likely to be June, their board approval in June this year, and obviously us wanting to press the button. So I think in the recommendations, one is for Finance Subcommittee or Strategy and Resources Committee to underwrite that 4.6 million until June of this year. At the same time, we want to de-risk any changes with central government. So following committee today, we're looking to submit a project adjustment form. The initial assessment is that we will stay above that 2-to-1 investment BCR that I mentioned earlier. Phase 2. So if phase 1 happens, what happens with High Street and Castle Square? We recognise the importance of that route. It's down at heel in terms of the public realm and the materials currently. So what we're proposing is we are seeking additional funding in the region of 3.4 million, again through gain share, but that's subject to prioritisation and I think a place-based plan process that the local authority has to work through. And we recognise it's a key link between the future levelling up fund investment at Castlegate and the investment in the heart of the city too. So it's a key strategic route that needs addressing. In terms of the second big intervention, Event Central. So this is just an image of 20 to 26 Fargate. So if we just move on to the next slide. Again, an approved budget of around 6.6 million. Circa 1.6 million of that was on the acquisition of the building back in 2021. Obviously 6 floors of space, including the basement. We've now got planning approval for that mixed-use development, which has up to 200 venue capacity, music venue and live performance venue in the basement. The first and the second floors would be semi-public with exhibition space, a juice cafe, bar, a non-licensed bar, should I state, and then the upper floors would be flexible workspace. We're currently assessing offers or expressions of interest from potential operators, and I think the intentions will come back at a future date with a preferred operator before obviously entering any terms and conditions. The refurbishment works are out to tender currently. The REBA stage 4 detailed design was within budget, but recognising the cost increases elsewhere, what this report is also proposing is that we reallocate some Getting Building Fund, Supported City Centre Investment Fund money, which was previously allocated to a further acquisition and refurbishment on Fargate, to the Event Central budget, and to make sure we've a healthy contingency there to deliver that project. Again, these are some images. When we purchased 20 to 26 Fargate, we were acutely aware we didn't want to stand accused of increasing vacancy on Fargate. So Access Space, an organisation, have been in there running or curating a programme of events for the last probably 10 months. I think that's generated tens of thousands of visits. It demonstrates there is a demand for that cultural use on Fargate. Yeah, so that's why we put those images in for that purpose. These CGIs obviously demonstrate the location of Event Central, bang opposite Marks and Spencer's, how that will tie in with the public realm works, the transformational public realm works, and there's a couple of elevational images of how we're opening up that building and having a double height front entrance. In terms of the front door scheme delivery update, again I mentioned earlier, approved budget of around £5.1 million, so we've made several grants and those bodies are listed there. We are in advanced discussions with 2 of the landowners on Chapel Walk, and the intention is that we will commit to those discussions and grant award those landowners to bring forward shopfront improvements and refurbishment of the ground floors and potentially the upper floors as well. Particularly given Marks and Spencer's have just recently closed their rear entrance, it's a key or a priority in terms of addressing that issue. And again, I've just highlighted there the remaining 1.1 million of that budget
is reallocated to the public realm and infrastructure budget to help with meeting that 5.7 million gap on the first phase. And I think that's it. I've flown through it.
Wow is the word. Delivering the vision. It's city's going through a transition and starting to take shape, and you've stuck with it. Well done to Matt and his team. Questions, folks? Richard, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. On page 200 of the pack, so 6.6.1, where it talks about cycling access on Fargate. I understand there's been some back and forth over the past year or so about whether there would be an access road or whether people could use it, or there would be one but you couldn't use it. So the clarity on that is welcome. I understand there's concerns from stakeholders about the exact design of that, and I hope that those those concerns can be accommodated and addressed. I'm a carer for someone who uses a wheelchair, so I'm well aware of issues with like curbs and other issues with that. Could you clarify whether this route is primarily as a through route through the city centre, or is to facilitate getting to the shops on Fargate or other places of employment?
Yeah, I mean, just before I bring Matt or Tammy in, you were probably present when Mr. Martin asked the question from Access Liaison Group, and just before the meeting started, I had an opportunity to speak to Andrew and Christine regarding a follow-up meeting, including having the officers present to address the issues that Access Liaison Group have raised with us. Because it's not just about the future high street from Greater Green 2, 3 and hopefully possibly 4, but it's the work we're doing. If I use my ward as an example, we've got the mini Holland scheme, so again it's important that we try and address the issues, and what I've agreed with Mr. Martin is to have the three of us with the officers to attend that meeting, because as it says in the report, you're not allowed to cycle. I wasn't aware of that until Matt highlighted it at a briefing session. But people do go down on their bike, and the discussions we've had is, where the businesses are being serviced, we're hoping cyclists can use that route as it's stated in the report. So yes, pedestrians, cyclists are more than welcome. But we do need to take on board what the Access Liaison Group is, because if we're going to ensure the city is inclusive and accessible to all, then we just need to tweak a few issues there. So I'm confident we're going to get there. But I don't know if Matt or Will want to add anything, or sure, anybody wants to.
I agree, Chair. I think probably there is a distinction between the provision that we aim to provide on Fargate and other sort of swifter, segregated cycle routes around the city centre. Fargate is primarily a pedestrian area. It's also been earmarked for events. There are going to be people, hopefully, because the plans are very exciting, milling, using the shops, using the facilities on Fargate. We want to be able to enable cycling on the service route, but we need to recognise that, primarily this is an area for pedestrians. So I think in terms of the characteristics of the route, certainly I wouldn't describe it as a fast-through route. I think, we've got other routes like that around the city centre, but we do want to be able to allow people on bikes to use the space, and also, provide for people who are going to be living and visiting Fargate by bike as well. So I agree with you, Chair. I think we've got just some things to look at around the design. We want to make sure we get it right, but as Mr. Martin said, I don't think this area is characteristic of other areas that we're doing around the town centre in terms of cycling provision, where we are providing swifter, segregated, specially designed cycling routes.
Does that answer your question? You're more than happy to. You can come back if you want to, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. It was just, because people have raised concerns about, conflict between, different users, pedestrians, people with, disabilities and cyclists and so forth. Do we record any of those incidents? Is there any because as has been mentioned, people do cycle along Fargate now, even though it's prohibited. Is there any data to that shows that there is an issue?
I don't think we collect the data. It does depend on the individual. I remember me raising something regarding my ward. I had a briefing on Mini Holland, and if I'm cycling or walking or in a vehicle, if I don't end up in hospital or don't call the police, then if two parties resolve it, it's not recorded anywhere. So we've got to be mindful that some people will report and some don't because they've been able to resolve it themselves. The key bit for us is to ensure that, as I've said, it's accessible to everybody. I know cycling's prohibited. I don't want us to go out now and stop all cyclists, but everybody uses it in a sensible way. I haven't seen a cyclist or a buggy going at a fast speed. Everybody's considerate to everybody, and the aspiration, as it's been demonstrated on the slides, is we want tables and chairs outside, that continental feeling. It's great that we haven't just closed the doors on Event Central. I was at the Heritage Fair last year, and there's always something happening in there, and I know Marks and Spencer's ambition is to move the cafe from upstairs to downstairs. And for me, we've got some great officers here, and I'm very confident they'll find a solution. And as I said, myself, Andrew and Christine are going to meet with the excess liaison group just to understand some of the concerns they have. But I am confident that we will have a solution for Fargate, as I say, which will be accessible for all of us. Christine?
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the scheme. I think it's ambitious. I think there's some risks in there, but that's okay. We've got to be forward-looking and take risks. I'm just curious about the long-term operator or building manager for the, what's it called? I've forgotten already. I'm going, Event Central. Is this, obviously we don't want to manage the events ourselves, but is this just going to be somebody managing the events, or how will the maintenance of the space and things, is that part of the contract, or are you looking at just doing that as a Sheffield City Council building and just getting somebody to do the events?
No, I think it would be a lease of the building would be, they would manage that building, they would curate the events. The council would have probably very little role in that building, other than conditioning in the terms and conditions, the type of events it should be.
So what about the longer term maintenance of the building?
So that would form part of the lease. So there would be a repairing and insuring lease. So the repairs would fall to the operator essentially, subject to negotiation, but that's the intention.
Councillor Masters and then Councillor Sanger.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I've actually seen the plans proposed, and I think they're great, but it really worries me about the High Street and Castlegate. Now, I know that you say on 1.67 proposed phase 2, you're looking for funding. What happens if that doesn't get through? Or how long do we have to wait? Because this project will take till March next year. Have you got schemes on the go? Because, I mean, to me, it would be such a detraction from that area if we've got the current state of High Street right alongside. There's no footfall there because of the way the buses have been rerouted. There's got to be some plans in case you cannot develop it as you originally envisaged under the original phase. So can you sort of assure me, enlighten me about proposals, especially if the funding doesn't get through?
Yeah, so obviously we'd like to have done it all as a phase one, but the construction price increase means that that's just not possible, so we've had to cut back. We have a number, you're absolutely right, it's a critical piece of the jigsaw between the work that we're doing up through Levelling Up Fund on Castlegate and the work that's coming in through Future High Streets Fund and Heart of the City. So it's a really important piece of the jigsaw. The intention at the moment is to put the project forward for gain share funding and the Sheffield portion of the gain share funding. That's got to go through a prioritisation process, but that's within Sheffield's gift to do that. So that's the intention at the moment. We are still fairly positive that there's no reason why that should fail, but there are other regeneration funds in the offing. So it's something that we're very alive to, but gain share's the first place to go.
What about timescale for anything like this? When will you expect a decision? Have you got sort of some plans, sort of, outline plans for the area?
So the plans and the scheme has been designed and developed, so that's all in place. So it's the timescale of the funding. So that's very much something that we'll be looking at over the next few months, really, is bringing that forward subject to prioritisation within the council itself. There will be a full business case process that works its way through the MCA, so it'll be subject to MCA timescales.
Councillor Sangar.
Thanks, Chair. Fargate and Barker's Pool are just absolutely essential to getting the city back up and running. And I know we've been around this for, more than 2 decades. Clearly the current state of Fargate and High Street are not great, and it's great to have the vision. But I'm just trying to understand in terms of the future High Streets Fund and and where we are in terms of costs, because every time you have a capital project, you can have overspends. This is not the first time it's happened. It won't be the last, and I think we get that. There's particular construction industry inflation at the moment. It's a bit concerning that the install hostile vehicle mitigation wasn't costed at the beginning, because the Nice attack was a number of years ago. So I think my concern is, and I think the pictures are great, my concern is just understanding where we are in terms of contingencies and where our key partners in terms of the Mayoral Combined Authority and the government department are in terms of the business case ratio of this project. Because from a Sheffielder point of view, Fargate is essential. We need Fargate to work. But if the original ratio was only 4.2 and you're effectively doubled it, and that worries me that you're heading down towards 2, and it worries me that when you get on site, you might find something else goes wrong, because that's the nature of construction. So I'm just concerned about what the contingencies are, and I'm concerned about how we deliver on this, and then I'll tag on my concerns to what Councillor Masters has just said, that we're losing High Street to make sure Fargate works, which is absolutely the right thing to do. Fully accept that. But I think from a member point of view, we've got a very detailed report here, which we welcome, but I don't think we understand what the next steps are in terms of the challenges. I was certainly surprised that it came out double. Very pleased to see the detail, and I understand that officers have put a huge amount of work in to get to this stage, but very concerned if either government department or Mayoral Combined Authority will say, well, your original business case no longer stacks up. Please look again at the scheme. How do you assure me that our key partners on this scheme understand where we're at and understand what we need to do over the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, just before they come in, the council took the risk itself, committed the £5 million because of the seriousness of the issue that the city centre faced. And as somebody who regularly attends the MCA, if we look at the previous report, the MCA has gave us, the Mayoral Combined Authority has gave us millions and millions, and there have been Heart of the City, Parkwood and other schemes where we've received the Mayoral Combined Authority funding. Difficult for us to say here and now, speak on behalf of the MCA and say, yeah, it's certainty. I'm quietly confident that we will get the final gap. The challenge has been, as we've all recognised, is material costs have just rocketed, and inflation and everything else. I mean, some of the tenders that are coming back, you know, it's ridiculous prices. If you ask somebody to do a job at your own house, it's absolutely mad. So, but it will come down at some point. I mean, the Bank of England have clearly said inflation is going to drop. But for me, you know, we've taken a risk. I mean, if we look at the slides, if you go down Fargate, Event Central is ours. We start work in March on Fargate, and that small bit, which is the key bit for me, I do believe that the Mayoral Combined Authority will give us the cash. It's for us to put that case forward, because it is down to members to say, once it comes down to prioritisation, it is down to us as members to say either yeah or nay. So some of that risk does fall on us members. I don't know if Matt or Tammy want to come in and add anything else.
I think that's fair. It's challenging, and this isn't an issue just for Sheffield, as you're well aware. We've had this discussion across the board. There's been a lot of pushback from all areas to government to say we're facing unprecedented times with cost inflation, but they're not giving any more cash out through these schemes. So, you know, there isn't we can't get more money for Future High Streets Fund through Future High Streets Fund, if that makes sense. We've got to manage within our existing budgets. In terms of the MCA funding, as Councillor Iqbal alluded to, there is gain share funding available, and it is for Sheffield to prioritise that gain share, and you know that will come down to members to understand what our member priorities and which schemes we put forward in the future.
Yeah, I hear that, and I hear that gain share is more within our control. I think my concerns remain that inflation might come down to 5% at some point in the next 12 months, but that's still 5% on top of the 11%, and we've already heard construction industry inflation is not the same as CPI. It's clearly affected by a whole host of other international events and UK specific events that we as a council cannot control. We have to get Fargate right. We have to deliver on this project, and I think as members we understand that Fargate must work rather than and we'll be prepared to put High Street as second. But my concern remains: what are the warning signs? What can you give us as assurances in 6 months' time that this programme is on course? I mean, we get the vision, we get that we have to stay the course through this particular period in terms of the bids going in, and we accept that we're at a difficult stage, that you said it was going to be £9 million and it's £18 million, and we're hearing that message. I think we're all saying it needs to work, and we're happy to go to the MCA and use gain share money, but what happens if we come back in 6 months' time and it's not 18, it's 21 million? At what point do we say this much and no further? The government is already saying there's no more money for future high streets. You've just said, officers just said, the problems that Sheffield faces in terms of future high streets are not unique to Sheffield. We've all got to find new ways of getting our city centres to work. I fully understand that, and we've got a lot of schemes further advanced than this one. I'm very concerned about how we're going to cope with this if we have another batch of, in 6 months' time, we have another set of significantly increased costs. And I just don't know how we prioritise a series of schemes if we're struggling to control costs on many of these schemes, all of which are essential for the future of Sheffield. And I don't understand how we prioritise those as members. I don't understand the process. So I think that's what I'm struggling with, Chair. I'm fairly I'm fairly new to the detail of these regeneration schemes, and I'm just concerned if the government are saying that Future High Street Fund has been capped, then they are going to struggle. The government is going to struggle to deliver all the schemes the government wants to scheme. From a Sheffield point of view, we need to deliver Fargate. I get that. I absolutely get that. But this report has not filled me with a great deal of delight, and I've come out of reading this, and the presentation was good, But I've come out of this report with a lot of questions in my mind about where we're going to be as a council in 6 months' time and our relationship with the MCA in terms of delivering this key project in Sheffield.
Well, I mean, I'll bring in Sean. I mean, this was the government's making. That's why the inflation has gone crazy and they got rid of Liz. We now need to get rid of a Tory government and bring in a different government that is going to invest in our towns and cities. But regarding this project, I'll bring in Sean, then I've got Diane and then Craig after that.
Thanks, Chair. I think one thing just to how we've managed some of the risk in terms of your concern about deliverability, I think, as Matt alluded to, we appointed a contractor last year, so we have worked with the contractor to agree the price. So the prices that we're now talking about in the report are the agreed prices for delivering the report that's worked up with the contract. So it's, in essence, we've been out to tender. They've worked with us to finalise the design, done some of the survey work and quantified some of the risks. That's not to say the scheme is without any risk, because obviously with any scheme, when you start digging, what do you find in the ground? So we have quantified some of those risks by appointing a contractor to work through that second stage with us. The contingencies that we've got in the scheme, we believe are robust for the risks, for the nature of the work. And I think the point that Matt alluded to on Event Central is one of the reasons why we want to increase funding to that is to put in a healthier contingency, because we are currently out to the market on that. So we are a long way down managing the risks, but it is not risk-free.
No, so I mean, I absolutely hear that, and I accept that where we are now, we understand the risk much better than we did 12 months ago, and I do get that. So could I just ask, so when does this come back to this committee? So is it 6 months, or is it 12 months, or is it 18 months? I mean, I was just understanding the next stages in this, because this has been a very important report that's come today, and I welcome that. Just keen to know what the next stage is. We clearly don't want to stand over officers and look at which shovel goes where. That's not our job. We do need to understand where the overall costs are and where the project is in terms of timescale and budgeted costs.
I think Tammy said something's going to the Mayoral Combined Authority in the summer.
Well, there's a prioritisation exercise to do on gain share, but we can bring back a report whenever you want, really. But essentially, we'll be bringing something back on the appointment of the operator for Event Central. We can bring an update on costs, within the next 6 months. That's not a problem. I'm happy to bring update reports as members require.
Brilliant.
Okay, so can we do that? Can we bring back the update report in 6 months?
6 months, yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Colleagues comfortable with that, 6 months? And does that mean, just looking at officer resource as well, 6 months, brilliant. Councillor Hurst, then Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for this report. Very, very complicated, and you have to read it several times to actually get your head around what it all means. I do appreciate the aspects in it of the Renew Sheffield project, so the grants to overcome some of the obstacles for small business operators that allow them to come in and make a characterful environment there, at the same time reducing, their risk there. Some of the barriers that they face initially, so some very, very good aspects in here. I also very much like the one line that I picked up, that you're going to recycle some of the materials, particularly the granite sets. I think we would have been hung and flogged if we'd not given the pain that we'd gone through when we acquired those and put those in, if we'd not looked to reuse them. I'd just like you to talk to me about how Chapel Walk fits in this. We know that we've had issues on Chapel Walk. We know that it looks very sad at the moment, and I note that phase 1 will be enhancing the lighting, but from a very much a busy little bustling shopping street, it's become very bereft, and with the closure of the rear entrance to Marks and Spencer's, it's you walk into it and think, can I go up here safely now? And that's very much what people feed back to me. So if you could just talk a little bit about the progress of the front door scheme and where it fits in with this regeneration aspect, and and you know, if we where we get involved with that, where it comes into this aspect. Thank you, Chair.
Just before I bring you in, Matt, I'm just conscious of time, so if we could take Councillor Pugh's question as well, and then if you could respond, that'd be great.
It's a comment, not a question.
Bro.
But it doesn't need a response from officers, so it may be more appropriate to get the response from it.
So, yeah, on Chapel Walk, when we prepared the original business case, we did a lot of analysis around footfall, etc. And Chapel Walk, there's no doubt of its importance, not only as a shopping street, but also as a route to the mini interchange, and it's a well-used route for a lot of people. In terms of the actual the ground, the stone that's there, we feel it's in decent nick, so we thought rather than pull it up and relay, there's no point to do that, but we recognise the lighting's pretty poor down there, so we are committed to doing that under the public realm works for Fargate. The other aspect is we are in advanced discussions with two of the major landowners on Chapel Walk, and what they want to do is reinstate the old shop frontages, both stone frontages on the Victoria Hall, but then further up towards Fargate, I think there's one example of how they did used to look, and the intentions they will roll out that treatment at the shop fronts. So there is healthy interest in the letting those units. A lot of small businesses are very keen in moving in, and some have opened most recently. But yeah, there is a commitment to improving the environment down there, because yeah, it does look down at heel. So hopefully that's answered your question. There is a commitment.
We've given out grants as well. So last summer we ran an application process. There's a project board called Renew, and we invited applicants, and they could ask for up to 50,000. I think the bookshop was about just under 15,000. There's a new bookshop there. I mean, if you walk down Chapel Walk now, the shops are starting to populate, and this grant, some have occupied off their own backs, and there's one or two that we've supported via a grant process. So it's great news to see it populated. We are still covering the top. Is that still on? That's the question.
Not that I'm aware of. No, there's no cover.
No cover. Right. That's an interesting one. Councillor Pugh, if you want to come in with a comment. Anybody else with a comment?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't have any questions for officers, because, you know, obviously I think we know that the city centre, you know, needs regeneration, will benefit from regeneration in several areas, and I think that's why, you know, I think we ask difficult questions when difficult questions need to be asked. But I applaud the report and the work that's going on with these schemes, and I think it pays testimony to the visionary transformation which we're setting out for the city centre. And I think that we need to be mindful as elected members that we don't end up falling into an oppositional mindset where we try to score points against one another on the different political sides of the debate, and be very careful and cautious about our use of language, because when I hear us talking about members opposite talking about abandoning the high street in order to make, I think that can get picked up by the public, and it can damage the public's confidence in the vision and the transformation that we are trying to pursue in the city. And I back that up with an example from, I was doing street surgeries in my ward last week. I spoke to just under 100 people. 7 people that I spoke to were having discussions with me about their concerns about the need to regenerate the city centre, and they welcomed the kind of the scale and the scope of the plans that we have in place and the work that's underway. But each of these 7 people were telling me the same narrative, which is that the city centre has gone to rack and ruin. It's absolutely awful. It's a completely different city centre to the one that I see when I walk through, and I have the privilege of seeing these schemes. All 7 of those people confirmed to me that they haven't been to the city centre since before COVID. And 3 of them, I'm sorry to say, when I said, where are you getting this information from, cited political leaflets from the Lib Dem party that had been put through their door that had given them this impression that the city was going to rack and ruin. So I think we all need to have the collective responsibility that is instilled upon us by the new governance structure of the local authority and the fact that there is no one party in overall political control. And we all need to be making sure that we get behind Sheffield, we've got a vision for it, and we need to deliver on that vision according to the resources granted to us by central government. Councillor Iqbal mentioned that we know that currently the country's in an economic state because of the mismanagement by the most recent Tory government, but also our resources and capacity as a local authority have been decimated by 13 years of austerity cuts. And I just wish that I could remember which other political party it was that was part of the coalition that started that austerity process. It escapes me at the moment. Thank you.
Any comments from, comment from me. I can share some of Councillor Sanger's frustration because I've been involved as a cabinet member for about 5-6 years, as we've highlighted this committee because of the nature of the business we have. We don't get as many briefings on regeneration and everything else as we'd like. That's not criticism, it's about the agenda and what we need to get through business. So for me, because I've been involved, immersed, and it's been an amazing, difficult journey because it's bricks and mortar and that transition that we're having to take. And if you've not been regularly briefed or somebody from the outside, you do think, well, where we're going with this. But for me, as I've always said, we've taken on Heart the City, which is now coming towards the end of that programme. The council took a huge risk, one of the largest regeneration projects of its kind in the country. That's £500 million. And you're right, because this is what this committee is for, to ask those questions, so you can go back to your constituents and explain, this is what's happening in the city centre and so forth. And there will be folks out there that'll be critical. I mean, we had a bit of a, excuse the French, shit show on the containers, occasionally. I mean, that's the first time we've got something wrong. But overall, I just think the officers in the regeneration team and others have just done an amazing job with the limited resources that we've had. And, we're probably one of the few cities that was able to get 2 levelling up fund bids successful. I mean, the government should have told us that once you've had the cash, you're not going to get another round. We spent, officers, not we, but we've been briefed, officers must have spent considerable time putting another 2 bids, which we shouldn't have if the government had been clear with this guidance. But back to here, I mean, Castlegate, the planning application, I understand, is going in, or has gone in. Future High Street Fund, as it says on the timetable, we're going to be delivering in March. But like everybody else, I do share the concern about that final bit. But I am confident, we as members, because we all, regardless of party, we all want to see, and I've heard comments from members, we all want to see the same. We want the city centre to flourish for everybody, and I do believe we'll get that final millions that we need to connect Castlegate onto Fargate, onto heart of the city. So for me, I am very, very grateful to the officers. Thank you for the report. Very detailed, which is really good, because there are members of the public that keep asking us about open transparency, and having these regular reports, and it was Councillor Sangar who did recommend this, that we have reports, and it gives members of the public an opportunity to have a read and have their say. So once again, well done, folks. It's amazing. We will have the best city centre in the country once we're finished. Any other comments? Councillor Sangar, you can be the last.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I mean, clearly, one of the big challenges of the new governance arrangements is that we now have committees. We've had a cabinet system for 21 years that we understood. We are now working under these new arrangements, these new cross-party arrangements. It will be a challenge for all of us, but it's a particular challenge on transport and regeneration schemes, because we've just heard from both our transport colleagues and regeneration colleagues that most schemes take longer than 12 months. And, you know, we are only, we've only had this new structure since, since May. So we do have a particular challenge on these schemes. But I would say, I would urge it on all members, on all committees from all parties, that now that we no longer have a cabinet scrutiny system, we have to, our job now is to be critical friends of officers and to make sure that we monitor projects, we appreciate the vision, we try to come up with a shared vision, which is not just cross-party, but also involves our partners. But we also are prepared to ask searching and challenging questions and make sure that we deliver the schemes that the people of Sheffield need. And when we are custodians of public money, whether that is council money or mayoral authority money or government money, that we make sure every pound of that is well spent. So we'll continue to ask challenging questions, but we also continue to support the regeneration of the city centre. I think this is a very, as the chair just said, this is an open report. That's welcome that we're open and honest and transparent, but we still have a lot to do to deliver the vision that the council has set out. So you'll welcome this report and look forward to the success of this project and it coming back in 6 months' time to know that it's on track. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Can we all agree the report? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you ever so much, and that concludes today's meeting. 6 minutes. Brilliant. Cheers, folks.